Welcome to Saturday, June 6th, VEVC Zoom. What do we call it? Zoom meeting here. This is the newbie Q&A event, although it always degrades into expertise. What I want to say is anybody with questions, there are no bad questions, no goofy questions. All questions are great questions. And so anybody who is just starting out looking at EVs here, please, this is for your time. And everybody who's going to speak is great at this stuff. Been doing it for years. So anyway, we've got the mention about the mute. So just a reminder, mute yourself and unmute to speak and we'll be good. I'd like to welcome all the members, VEVC members then, and of course, any visitors. And everyone's welcome. Membership's not required. If you'd like to go to our website and become a member, it's free. No obligations. Then you get the email notices for these meetings and other crucial information. I'd like to welcome any students who might be online today. We had a student here a couple meetings back, and we'd like to encourage those folks younger folks to get involved, and feel free to ask questions. So I'll just introduce James Locke. I think most of you know him. He's going to be talking about some remote travel and who knows what else. James is here with Lisa, and their family are living in California right now. And it's great, though, they're in the same time zone now. For a couple of years, they were in an earlier time zone. So this kind of thing happens. So we're seeing these guys a lot more, and it's really helped a lot. I think it's great. And they got some interesting experiences going on. So James, we're going to do a Q&A at the start for newbie questions. Then James will do a presentation and also take questions. And then Glenn, our secretary with the club, has got a video store happening. He's got a couple of videos, which I hope some of you have had the chance to watch. I just saw them. I think they're awesome. The presentation was great about battery chemicals and structure and balancing charges and all kinds of issues related to EVs. And then we can finish up at the end and fill time with more questions and idle chit chat, I'm sure. Anyway, so I know I could use a haircut, so that's what it looks like. COVID on my side of things. My barber's open, but I went by the other day and there were like 12 cars in the parking lot for one guy. I was like, I'm not going to wait in the parking lot with a bunch of old guys getting their heads shaved. Wasn't that? I'll wait a week. I'll give them time to catch up. But, you know, we go and you buy the groceries maybe once every 2 weeks. But we are doing things like Gwen and I will put on backpacks and walk for half an hour to the liquor store to get our supply. And it's like an hour round trip, right? But no, last night, 2.5 hours, because we kept bumping into people that we see and chatting. 2.5 hours it took. I mean, I thought I was never going to get home. So then it was time for bed almost, you know. So, I mean, anyhow, I had a beer and went to bed. But I think people are out and about more and talking more. That's very interesting. The city of Colwood's closed off a piece of the spit. You can get at it from both ways, but you can't drive through. And this, I think, is a big improvement. It's going to make some changes. We'll see what stays. So this is all good. And when you're driving down there with the birds, the quietness of the EV seems to even underscore the importance of electrification of transportation. It's been so quiet with so few cars on the road, and we could add a whole lot of vehicles back on with just tire noise, which help a lot. And they're hauling themselves up the hill near my house, and you can hear these engines roaring. And I think the birds appreciate the quiet. I would like to mention that tomorrow is the second anniversary of my the Model 3 Gwen and I picked up, and it's running great. About 35,000 kilometers. It's like, holy smokes, 2 years already. And a couple of times we've had things done, whatever, and it's just been great all around. Our experience is fabulous. I can hardly wait for the COVID shutdown to lift so we can go do some road tripping, like maybe California. I hear they got a spare room down there. Hey, that would be awesome. And our Nissan Leaf is now 8.5 years old, 38,000 kilometers, still has 85% of the battery, still performs exactly how it did the day we bought it, and that one's perfect. And I'm just saying, like right now, this time of year, I'm really enjoying the seasonal change coming out of the cold weather into the warm spring weather. And the battery improvement is always like every year. It's like, wow, I just got a new car, because everything, the watt-hour per mileage rate goes down on the Leaf. On the dash, it shows you that. And the Leaf just gets better range all around. And it's a really nice improvement to see every spring. So, James, let's get on with your snippet.
Yeah, I was thinking, Dave, if I could give it might spur some questions about general EV ownership and everything like that. And I want to, if anyone feels they can't get a question in because there's a lot of chatter, feel free to use the chat window. I'm keeping an eye on that as well. There's a chat button down at the bottom of the screen there, depending on your medium. If you feel better typing a question, please feel free, and I'll keep an eye on that thread as well to get other questions in that way.
Perfect. So why don't you take it away, James?
Sure. Well, here, I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Here we go. Can everyone see the screen? Perfect.
I can see it.
Okay, so I've only got 3 slides here, so I'm going to keep this short and sweet and leave time for questions. But basically what I wanted to highlight is some of the long distance road trips Lisa and I have been part of. It's mostly me, I will admit, but Lisa and the kids have been a big part of this. So our journeys, someone needs to stay home and keep the kids in school and stuff, and the money making that I do with the trips here up north. So this is since 2015, across 4 different electric vehicles. Yes, all Tesla, and that's just because of the supercharging network. But we've owned a Leaf, an S, an X, and a 3. Currently, we own an S and a 3 here in California, and then we also have a Model 3 up in Hay River, Northwest Territories with Lisa's parents. So I've been as far north as Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, and as you can see this map, everywhere between all the way down to California and Cape Canaveral, Florida. This is not an exclusive map. It just gives you a highlight of the many trips we've taken in our electric vehicles. Little fun fact, we've done over 410,000 kilometers, which is more than the distance from the Earth to the Moon, 100% electric. So I think that's an amazing show of the technology that is available today. That if you asked me 5 years ago, I would say no way that would ever exist. So some key points I wanted to bring to your attention. In terms of long distance road trips, some of the things I've picked up is some key features, some key tidbits of information that I've learned. Here's some pictures of some of the road trips and my travels across the 60th parallel. Is always drive for the weather that you're going to be driving in. Like any road trip in any vehicle, make sure you know what's ahead of you before you leave. We're even more hyper aware of that in electric vehicles as we watch our charge rate, and we have that ability to see what we're consuming as we drive. This is true in all electric vehicles, but like I said, I'm going to be specifically talking about Tesla in this situation. As you drive, you can see your consumption and estimated charge arrival. what I've learned is when summer, you definitely want to leave with 20% estimate of arrival percentage due to unexpected rain and windstorms in the summer. One quick thunderstorm can eat up 20% range like you wouldn't believe. Been there, done that, won't do it again.
Or the windstorm across South Dakota.
Or the windstorms through South Dakota, yes. In the winter, we always minimum 30% on arrival, if possible, depending on the distance of the leg between superchargers, between fast chargers. And that's just due to, as you can see in the far left photo there, how much snow is on the road and how much snow is on the back of your vehicle. Because we have no heat energy, the snow loves filling up those wheel wells and the rear of the vehicle. So just keeping that clear helps with your range and efficiency. So those are some of the little things that most people don't think about when they're on a road trip, because you can just stop anywhere and fill up with gas. And with electric vehicles, while you can stop and fill up anywhere, because everywhere has electricity, it's the fast charging networks are still growing. So you have to consider the time that's involved in keeping everything efficient. On top of that, you want to keep an eye on tire pressures. The amount of people I've seen post pictures from their dash and there's a tire pressure warning and they're complaining about efficiency, and I just shake my head and go, well, fill up your tire pressures and you'll see an improved efficiency. One of the biggest things I wanted to highlight is what I have in my trunk when I go anywhere, let alone on big road trips.
And it's never this clean.
And it's never this clean. I clean this up for everybody so they had a clear view of my trunk. You notice there's no junk back there. There's usually a lot of stuff in my trunk. So we always carry a tire pressure gauge, a manual one, to make sure it's efficient, and never trust the ones on the tire pumps. I always double check my pressures. We always have a 12-volt tire pressure inflator. If you are along supercharger networks, you don't need a lot of these charging ends, but if you are going anywhere like I do, and for most Canadians, especially BC and stuff like that, if you're going off the network, I have a welding outlet, NEMA 1450, a standard 120-volt plug, and of course the J1772 to Tesla adapter. The extra one there is for a dryer outlet and stove. What's that one called? I can't remember. Sorry, guys. But that's for northern trips where I ran into it once, so now I carry it. The one thing I'll say, and I'm sure most of you know Rolf, and he's an electrical engineer. The man is like the MacGyver of electrical connections. While he can do that, I do not recommend you try to make your own cables if you don't know what you're doing. Get a qualified electrician or buy the Tesla ends or whatever manufacturer ends you can get your hand on depending on your vehicle. I did have a homemade welding outlet, and there was a loose connection and it caused arcing, and it didn't cause a fire, but you just got to be aware of those risks when you're dealing with high voltage. This Gullu here is a 12-volt boosting battery pack. Why I carry that? Because standard gas car drivers with their dead 12 volts, you can't boost it from an electric vehicle. So I carry that to help other people on the road that I might run into that need assistance. It's also in the unlikely event that you have a 12-volt issue, you could theoretically get that. At least you can get a charge going to keep the 12-volt system running. As everyone knows, the bugs. Invisible glass and a good chamois cloth for keeping the windscreens clean, back windscreen, sides, everything like that, keeping everything clean. So some of the issues we've run into and how we've dealt with them.
Right.
So 410,000 kilometers, as you can guess, I've gone through a bit of rubber in my time. I've lost track, 5 flat tires on road trips.
You had 2 in 2 days.
Yeah. It's always at the worst possible spot. Last one I had 2 flat tires at once, just south of Cincinnati, with the kids in the car at 9 o'clock at night on an interstate. And unfortunately on that situation, I learned you never rely on one tow truck provider. I couldn't get a hold of Tesla roadside assistance because I don't know why I never found out. So I highly recommend having BCAA or AMA or something like that. Because if you're out of warranty, roadside assistance won't help you unless you're paying for it. So always have a backup plan for those worst case scenarios. As Lisa knows with me, I'm always planning for every situation. So that's just me. Anyway, I kind of whipped through that all really quick, didn't I?
Well,
so let me answer it up for questions here. I can't see, where'd my chat go? So I'm gonna open up. Hold on a second.
Where do you buy the adapters?
So these adapters I buy at Tesla.com, the Canadian version. So these adapters are available from the Tesla website in Canadian and US dollars. I will say the welding outlet adapter is only available in the US. So I did a little trick and had it routed through one of those mail relay points in the US. However, I'm happy to be that for anybody. If you can't get something in Canada from the Canadian store with Tesla and you need someone to help get from the US store and relay, I'm happy to help with those kind of issues and getting the adapter ends. These are all the Gen 2 Tesla ends. So anyone with the Model 3 will recognize these. If you have the Gen 1s, they're still available as well that come with the older S's and X's.
James,
Yes.
what is the recommended tire pressure?
Model 3, 42 PSI. Model S and X, 45 PSI. However, if you're, sorry, go ahead.
Doesn't it depend on whether we're using the summer tires or the
No,
winter ones?
they're the same.
Really?
They're the same for the rims. So, however, as Elon's tweeted about, if you run your tire pressures a little higher, it improves efficiency, but increases wear on your tires. So the 2 tires that I had blow were because wore through quicker is because I had my tire pressures at a higher setting, and it ate away at the outer edge quicker because it wasn't nicely balanced across the whole tire. I got greater range, but I wore off the rubber quicker on the tires.
Yeah, because you take it to any tire shop, they'll put it down to 32 or something just so you have a soft ride.
Exactly. Yeah, of course. Exactly. So I have 2 questions here. Jim Standen asked, how do you use the Gullu to jumpstart the Tesla 12-volt battery? Basically, what I would do is if the 12-volt battery is low and your car's not powering up, you connect it to the 12-volt. It depends on the Tesla. It gives the 12 volts back to the vehicle so you can unlock the car, start a charge cycle, which gets the DC to DC going to get the 12-volt, at least charging to the point where you can go.
But where is the battery?
It
Like
varies.
even
So
I don't know.
in the 3, you can access it by removing that plastic cover in the front. You can actually reach the 12 volt. The S and X, you have to do it. It varies. If you have the original nose, you have to pop the nose, and there's some points there to connect it to.
So you have to YouTube it.
You have to YouTube it, yeah. You have to Google it and find out for your vehicle. Another person, David, had a great question. Food, blankets, water, emergency. Okay, actually that leads into a perfect story. One of the situations Lisa and I ran into in the X is during the Coquihalla ice storm, when was that, 2018? That shut down the Coquihalla and 3,000 odd people were stuck on the highway. That was us in the X with no food or water because we didn't think ahead because we assumed all would be good. So because we always keep our, we always overcharge for the destination, we were stuck on the Coquihalla with no off-ramp with 3,000 people in an X with enough power to provide heat for a day.
Yeah, it was about a 52% charge, and
Yeah.
we turned on the heat and watched how much consumption was every hour, and it was about 1.5%
Per hour.
So we theoretically could have stayed there for like a day.
Yeah, and still make our
With
destination.
our heat on. Everyone else had to turn off their car and on every once in a while, just
to keep warm.
Just to keep them warm.
So an electric car in that situation was a better situation. So that's when we learned you always have water in the car when you're on a road trip because weather can throw curveballs at you or a flat tire on a deserted road. And definitely some in the winter, always have something to keep warm with.
And it was really good on the ice, better than the other
Yeah,
cars.
our car wasn't
better.
slipping. I wish I was recording. I had the camera in the car and I didn't turn it on. It was like right out of a movie. You had trucks jackknifing and sliding, and you had cars spinning the wheels, and we were in the X, and it was just going up like a tank, turning and driving, and then we got stuck, and I got out and immediately slipped and fell on my butt. So, but the car was like stuck there. It was amazing. So these vehicles with all-wheel drive and traction control and torque response is just amazing. There's a whole story there if you ever wanted to hear it on how we got out of it. Can you put on the screen the names of each one of those adapters? I can. Let me do that for you guys.
You mean like the 1030 or 1050?
Yes.
That kind of name?
Yeah, so let me, do I have a, hold on a sec here, guys. Let me do that for you.
We're just going to write on it?
No, I'm just going to go to tesla.com
Oh.
and show the adapters.
I found the most popular one was the welding one in the north.
Yes, very much so. That one I've used the most by far over any of the other charging adapters.
Yeah.
So you, oh, nope, sorry guys.
The individual adapters. are
Yeah.
good too.
That's Gen 1. There they are. Here they are. So there's the different types. I don't know if you guys can see them on the side there. So you've got the different adapter models along the side here, and then how much mileage gain per hour on this on the graph. Let me just change this window a bit.
Do you know which one is which?
Usually what I do,
I think
What's the welding?
so as you select them here, oh, it's not going to do it. Previously on the Tesla website, as you selected the model, it showed you a picture of the unit. And it's not doing that
because
now.
I know you can buy each one of them separately, but
Yeah.
you have to find each.
What I recommend, because I'm not fully versed on this, sorry about that. They used to do it when you selected in the drop-down box here, it would show you the end so you knew you were putting the right one. Google's your friend in this case. Definitely use Google to verify the NEMA type that you're buying and the amperage and plug type for sure.
The one on the far right is the RV one, the 4-pin
Yeah,
one
NEMA
there.
1450.
And that's handy at times, but sometimes you got to call ahead because when it's popular for camping, you can't always get a plug.
Yes, definitely. You always have to call ahead and make sure that they're willing to let an EV use that plug. I've run into situations where they look at you like you're from another,
Yeah,
they don't know what you're talking about.
yeah, that's right.
Ian and Lorraine asked some questions here. Question 1, could you talk about most appropriate apps cards to be equipped with for purchasing at different locales, which are non-Tesla supercharging stations? For that situation, if I'm going on a trip, what I do is I use PlugShare to figure out what stations I'm going to be visiting and then make sure I have the app available. However, I will recommend some of those locations, if you're going to be using them, you might want to get the little card they provide, because if you have cell issues or internet issues, you may not be able to authenticate with the app and get the station to come online. I've run into that personally, and I've had to find the signal, like standing there trying to get cell signal to call support to get them to activate the station. So those little cards they offer. So there's ChargePoint, Flow, Green Lots, but that might have shifted. They're switching those, but I have a Green Lots card. And then in the US, I have one more. What's it called?
We have a bunch of American
There's a whole bunch
ones,
of American ones
They're
too.
very different.
One thing I do is if I've caught myself on a situation where I don't have it, I download the app while I'm standing there and create an account. It's usually not that difficult, and you have it for future use. These days, I've mainly been using the Tesla supercharging stations and then the stations in British Columbia, which have been free, but will switch to pay, obviously, and then just download the app for that location. Also, yes, Motorized sells a universal access card, so reaching out to a company like Motorized and finding out what they have to offer to make it simpler, the better. The KISS principle is always applicable. Second question there is, what about also carrying an extension cord for overnight trickle charging where necessary? Yes, on 120 volts, we have one of those as well. We've used the oil charging stalls in Alberta, in northern Alberta, to trickle charge overnight or in an emergency. If you got time, you just trickle charge on 120 volts. That will work, we found, until approximately minus 10 degrees Celsius. After that, it will only keep your battery warm and not add range. So if you're traveling in the winter, don't count on 120 volts to get you out of a bind. Also, the biggest thing I can recommend, if you are in the middle of nowhere, BC, Alberta, NWT, anywhere, and you see that you're not going to make it, slow down. See if you're going to improve your range with efficiency by slowing down to about as slow as 40 kilometers an hour, 40 to 45. If the weather sucks, stop, wait for that storm to pass and keep going. But if you're not going to make it, don't waste the charge trying to make it. Stop somewhere safe, call a tow truck, eat your pride that you're not going to make it and get towed somewhere safe, because you don't want to, being the guy that's been stuck on a highway with trucks whipping by at 80 miles an hour and no one stops to help you. it's better to, that was due to flat tires, not charging. But it's better to put yourself in a safe spot if you can, for sure. I do have Chatamo. I see that question. I do have a Chatamo. The Chatamo adapter, if you can afford it, is worth it. It's very expensive for what it's worth. And the number of times I've personally used it has been, I can count on one hand the number of times I've used the Chatamo adapter. Usually it's in Princeton on the way to Asuyus, and also south of Calgary heading into Montana. There's some level 3 chargers, Chatamos there. That's where I've used them. And for example, the VEVC has one that we rent out to our members if you need one, and we might expand that program. I know other organizations like the Tesla Owners Club of Alberta for members rents them out, and their membership's $20 a year to have access to those. So that's something definitely to consider versus owning one if you're not going to be using it much. Does your power cable adjust the amperage regarding after? Yes. So the car is smart enough to adapt your amperage to the situation. For example, when I was using my own welding outlet extension cable, it detected there was an issue and dropped the amperage to reduce the problem. It detected the resistance. So the Tesla specifically, and I'm sure other manufacturers are doing this as well, build in some protections to pulling more power than is available for the circuit. BC Hydro has their own app. Yeah, thank you, Heather, for mentioning that. I apologize for being out of loop with that. I'm not keeping up with some of these apps that are coming out. I mentioned Motorized does have the Tesla adapter. Northern BC, Chatamo, also necessary to go to Northern BC. Yes, for sure. Keep an eye on developments. I know Tesla is building a supercharging network along Highway 3, and wink, wink. I'm not going to say any more of that. Oh, Chatamo adapter. Yes, for the newbies. I apologize about that. Chatamo adapter is this on screen here. It is a special adapter that Tesla has developed that converts the BC Hydro level 3 Chatamo end to the nice, sleek, small Tesla end to charge your vehicle. I will note the Chatamo adapter max is 50 kilowatts. So even if you use a 100 kilowatt station, it will not pull more than actually probably about 42 to 45 kilowatts because of the conversion that's happening within the adapter itself. And as you can see, they're not inexpensive at 450 US. Let me switch this to Canadian dollars here for you.
It's about 8,000, I think.
8,000, yeah. These days,
602.
602, there you go. 602 Canadian dollars. So if you're not going to be using it much, borrow, rent, yeah, and go that route if you can. What else can I talk about here? Any questions about as a newbie? Let me see if I can think some of these things that I remember. Range anxiety, that is by far the first thing that Lisa and I had to get over. And you don't get over it until you drive. And you really experience what an electric vehicle is capable of and how your actions directly relate to range. The one thing I've learned in a gas car, it's pretty set. I mean, you do have some variation on that with speed and stuff like that. Electric car has much more variation in efficiency and range on how you drive your car and the weights associated with your car, extra baggage and stuff in the vehicle. Plan ahead. I mean, everyone should do that. Even a gas car, plan ahead for other things like that. Change range anxiety. Distance awareness. That's a good one, Eric.
It's more positive.
That is more positive. Distance awareness. That's true. I like that term. Other things that we had to really consider. Oh, I mean, the one thing that I find as the biggest positive to electric vehicles is being forced to stop is an amazing experience when you look past that perceived inconvenience of stopping to charge. 20 minutes on a fast charger, 10 to 20 minutes depending, is an excellent opportunity to take a break, go for a quick walk, use a washroom.
Talk to your kids.
Talk to your kids that are on the tablets for the last hour and a half to 2 hours and talk to them and visit an area that usually you would fill up for 5 minutes and blow right past. So many of our communities you don't really see because you're just focused on your destination and not the journey, which I find electric vehicles has opened up to me is the journey is just as important as the destination. So that's kind of what electric vehicles have done, and community have definitely been the biggest experience with electric vehicles for us.
And it doesn't smell.
And it doesn't smell. Yeah. It's kind of like when smoking changed. You know, when you're always in a restaurant or bar with smoke, you never really noticed it. And then when it's gone, you really notice that smell. Same with emissions from gas cars. Any other questions or queries about electric vehicles or newbie questions? There are no stupid questions, so please feel free to ask via text or unmute yourself to ask, for sure.
I do have one more question. You said it was very easy to access the Tesla battery, the 12-volt battery.
In the Model 3.
Okay. Now, does that mean you can hook up an inverter easily and then use the big Tesla battery to transfer the power into that inverter by putting the battery on charge?
That's a good question, Fred. I don't have a direct answer. If the car is charging on a Tesla, I think it's always charging at 12 volts.
You mean like if your 12 volt was dead?
No. So Fred wants to hook an inverter directly to the 12 volt
Inverter.
and then use the big battery to charge the 12 volt to run the inverter.
So all the power comes through the 12 volt.
I've done that on my Leaf quite successfully.
Yeah, and a Leaf, Fred's
Yeah.
done that as well on his Leaf. And I remember the article, Fred, where you did that. And I don't know the direct answer.
I haven't heard of anyone successfully doing it.
It depends upon your DC to DC converter capacity. Because
Exactly.
I put a digital pure sine wave inverter in, but I limited it to 1,000 watts with 2 surge. I wouldn't go much above that with my Leaf because it only handles 70 amps. But it runs the furnace, it runs the deep freezer and fridge. That's all I care about, and a few lights.
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
probably up
the
to a
backup.
week.
Yeah, I kept a fridge, some lights, and a radio going for 24 hours here in Victoria. Last big power outage. And that was with the Leaf. So,
Yeah.
And now on a little 400-watt inverter. So I did buy a full 1 kilowatt pure sine wave inverter for the Model 3 when I got it, but I haven't had a chance to use it yet.
A lot of people have 2 electric cars. I've had 2 Leafs on a 3,000 watt inverter, and that was very nice to have 3,000 watt for the house.
That's true. Pull off the 2. That's, yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's at your own risk because obviously if you damage anything, Tesla's or any manufacturer is not going to cover damage.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, that's right.
Just know what you're doing and accept the risk. That's your choice, and that's great. I support that, especially in an emergency. I mean, if you're in an emergency situation, you got to use what you got in front of you, right?
Yeah, you could use the inverter to help another electric car get a charge.
Yeah, okay.
Well, overnight.
Trickle. Yeah,
Trickle.
Pretty slow.
low charge, yeah.
If you're both in the same, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the manufacturers build something in.
I think you'll see it over time. I remember JB Straubel was asked that question, and someone else when I was talking about Tesla. I don't remember who it was at the time. And I was told it's all the different regulations for the different areas is very difficult to navigate for Tesla to do that. And they'd have to hit all those different regulatory requirements to pull off that pack. Plus the wear on the pack, because the car is designed for driving, not for cycling like at a home battery use. So it does impact the longevity of the battery pack at this moment. I'm hearing rumors that the new 1,000,000-mile battery pack that we all hope Elon announces at Battery Day will help remove some of those technical roadblocks on the batteries. And I have a feeling Glenn will be talking about that during his battery session. So there's some new, oh no, he's saying no. So I think there are some new advances coming eventually, but again, it's going to be the various regulations over time. And there's a question here kind of from Don Scott about any chance Tesla has come out with a connector to use the Tesla charger on a Leaf or other J1772 connectors. No, Tesla officially has not done that yet. Some third-party people have, and you can use them obviously on level 2s, but you can never use that on a supercharger because of the authentication to a Tesla vehicle. I've brought that up with Tesla executives, and while they appreciate the idea of sharing those supercharging networks with other vehicles, it's a balance between, how do I word this? It's a balance, because if they open up all the Tesla supercharging network to all vehicles, all electric vehicles, there isn't enough for the demand. So it's hitting that critical mass to eventually open up those chargers to everybody, because I know Tesla would have the engineering capability to make the adapter should they choose to do it. And then obviously there's a whole bunch of techniques they can use for billing.
I think it's a giant can of worms to them.
And there's a giant can of worms to them. Yeah. So nothing.
There's also it's an equity thing as well, since
Exactly.
everyone who buys a Tesla
Has bought into it.
into that supercharging network. So
Yes.
yeah.
Exactly. And that's come up, and I've kind of mentioned the idea of if you build like a CHAdeMO adapter in reverse, you could build the cost of that into selling that unit and then the cost of charging it. But yeah, it's a complex issue that is going to take some time to address.
What about charging?
James?
Pardon me?
James, on the idea of the adapter the other way for a level 2 type thing, it would be handy if your home has a Tesla wall connector and then a friend comes over with a Leaf. For that kind of situation, it would be useful.
Definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
You can technically buy a Tesla high power wall connector and change out the cable in the end to a J1772. I'm told that will work. Tesla even does them, but they don't sell them. They only use them privately when they have to do J1772 with Tesla. If they have to deploy 50-50, like half Tesla, half J1772, they do that.
Kind of like in their parking lot.
Like at Tesla's factory.
Yeah.
A lot of them are J1772Ns for those that are driving Leafs or Bolts or any of the other electric vehicles for sure.
Who wants to go to Victoria?
Model 3, new in January, driver's side, weather stripping is loose, live in Salt Spring, and my phone app only lists Vancouver. Oh yes, as a service center, but want to go to the Victoria Service Center. How do I proceed? I've been I've been hounding Tesla Vancouver service manager and the regional manager on that. Apparently the issue is because we're on an island, they have to build a specific app to recognize that we all are on that island of Vancouver Island separate, and it's not an easy trip to go to Vancouver. So that they are working on it, but all things Tesla, it's limited resources and time and lots on the go. I've been trying to reach out to them on what's going on. Glenn has a comment on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, Tesla has been great in that the Vancouver people, they'll look up where you are, and generally they'll shunt you straight over to the island guys, because there are 2 island guys now, and sometimes a Vancouver guy will come over to the island as well.
Yeah, and what I'd recommend on that, and what I've personally done, is if you can't book mobile service for a situation like that and they're forcing you to Vancouver, in the notes say, I'm on Salt Spring Island and need mobile service for this. They'll see that, read it, and and it'll catch them. It could take a day or two for them to see it and reroute to mobile, but that's what I recommend.
Can you be direct and say, I want Victoria?
Yeah, just say that. I cannot come to Vancouver. Can I get this taken care of on the island? And if they say, no, you have to bring it in, then you can make the decision on how you want to proceed. There are still some situations where you have to go into service to get it done. No, I don't have any news on when we can expect one on the island. I wish I did to share with you guys. Yeah, and Don Scott on the home chargers. Yeah, for sure, like we were talking about there.
Excuse me, James. I think that perhaps if they book the service, describe the problem to Tesla, then when they respond, it goes to mobile because of where they are. That's how it worked for me. But I had to take the step of going ahead and actually booking it as if I was going to have to go to Vancouver, but they very quickly picked up that I wasn't in Vancouver. Just based on my address, I never said anything to them.
Oh, perfect.
And it worked. Yeah, and then before I knew it, I was talking to Jarrett and the actual technician and communicating with him, and sent a picture of the problem. And it wasn't even with Vancouver Tesla anymore. It was just directly with him. And that all happened. Yeah, and I booked the date, everything. And then all of a sudden he contacted me, and then I could resolve what it was. And there was lots of time and opportunity to cancel the appointment or whatever. But just go ahead and push the book button. It's kind of unnerving because you're booking your date and you haven't got any satisfaction that they understand or even have looked at it properly. But it doesn't matter. Just book the date and then the procedure goes. And that worked out fine. Also, just a possibility.
Yeah, and the Tesla app has updated for service now. When you pick multiple issues across multiple options, you get more text boxes to put more description. Yeah. So you have more space to do that.
Yeah, and take pictures and send them a picture. That's what he asked for, and I did that.
Pictures worth 1,000 words.
Yeah, it was awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
I've got a question. I'm a new owner and a new member.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm Hugh Waller. I'm near Souk on Vancouver Island, obviously. We've got a Model 3, and when I turn sharply to the right, I get a cold blast of air on the left side of the car, And when I turn sharply to the left, I get a cold blast of air on the right side of the car. And I call Tesla about this and sort of getting the runaround on getting a mobile appointment. They first set me up with Vancouver, and somebody from Tesla Mobile sent me an email asking for an address, and nothing ever happened for over a week. So I've emailed them again. This is a double question. So I wonder if anybody with the Model 3 has had that issue. It sounds like something's loose in the AC unit.
What you can do, I can recommend on that front, if you've got a situation where they're asking you to come into Vancouver when you'd rather have mobile come out and help you diagnose the issue first before you commit to a trip to Vancouver, just say that. Say, before I come into Vancouver, could I have a mobile, just be honest, say, can I have a mobile tech come out and help me confirm the issue before I book a ferry ride and a day off to come in and have you guys work on it. They are usually pretty good at honoring that request.
Because they might need a part and then you got to
Yeah.
come back again.
Yeah, so you go in, they don't have the part. They say, go home, we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks, and then you have to go back again, which is never fun. Been there, done that, don't want to do it again. We lived out in Souk when we lived on the island, so I know I know the area for that. And yeah, that's what I recommend is when you emailed, who did you email back? You recall?
Jeremy.
Okay, the other thing you could do is CC mobile _ service. Is that it, guys? At tesla.com. If he's really busy, they may not respond. And if you CC the main mobile service, they'll pick it up and do something with it as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's great help. Thanks.
I'll mention this, if Tesla owners out there, and of course other EV owners as well, specifically for me on Tesla owners, if you run into a situation where you've hit a brick wall with Tesla, I, as the president of the Tesla Owners Club of Vancouver Island, can find other paths to escalate it. Usually we need 5 or more people to have the same problem, but if you're all having a service problem, I consider that the same problem. Let me know. I'm happy to escalate it. If you feel you've hit a brick wall and no one's listening to your problem or can't solve a problem, we can try to escalate it for you via other channels with Tesla corporate. So for sure, let me know. Don't be afraid to ask the question. I'll get Jim to send out an email as well, maybe just mentioning, or email the info@victoriaevclub.com if you have a question, and then I'll reach out to you via my private address to work with anybody that's running into issues like that.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. And I wonder if any other Model 3 owners had a similar problem or issue.
I never have. I have a 3 too, and haven't run into that issue. Anyone else? Silence. I'm guessing silence means no. That's a new one for.
Yeah. No, I've never heard of that one yet. It sounds interesting.
Yeah. You found a corner case.
I'm trying to even think of how that would be technically happening in the vehicle.
Both sides
on
equally.
both sides equally.
Yeah.
Was there any chance your windows were open?
No. Actually, it was a hot day and the air conditioning was on, and going around, like I said, a left corner, there would be a blast of cold air on my wife. Going around a right corner, I'd get a cold blast. So it's like something loose inside the system is diverting the air.
When the AC is off.
Have you tried it? Yeah. Have you tried it with the AC off? Is it related to heat versus cold, for example, or off completely? Do you get that burst? That's just curiosity on my part.
I'll have to try it going back and forth between Victoria and Souk along that windy part of the road.
Yeah.
Oh, does it only do it at high speeds? Like,
yes.
Can you do it in the like
low speed? Yeah.
Low, yeah.
Sounds like a guidance system.
Yeah,
you know, you steer away from the cold.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's
a new autopilot
autopilot
feature. Don't go that way.
Not so much the speed as the lateral G-forces.
Lateral G's, okay.
Actually, I'm in the East Souk with also Tesla Model 3. A couple of things. First of all, I had hard times. Vancouver wanted to service my Tesla Model 3 to change the computer to the full self-driving. And I managed to get it so that actually Fernie is taking care of that. And I found from Rolf, who's got Teslas, quite a few Teslas as well, he said that most everything can be done by Fernies today. So I could actually contact Furnace, and they even talked to me, phoned me even after. So in 3 days' time, I'm taking my Tesla to Furnace. The only thing with them is that they are very busy, so that it took quite a while before the appointment was possible. And the other question to you as a new Tesla Model 3 owner, I haven't needed air conditioning. It's been pretty cold all around, so I never started air conditioning here in East Zug this year. Where did you actually, what sort of climate was it when you had it on?
It was, what, 2 weeks ago when it was 30 degrees in Victoria.
Oh, I see. That was when I was in Courtney, I think, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a life and death issue or anything really a big problem.
It's an annoyance.
Just
for
an
sure.
annoyance,
It's weird and it might get
and
worse.
it should be addressed before the warranty's over.
For sure. Definitely. Yeah.
Well, I will try it with I turn the air conditioning on and try what you just described, and I can get back to that one.
Sounds like something to do with launch mode or something.
Yeah.
So I had a question, if you can hear me okay.
Yes.
During those 384,000 kilometers, how much did you use autopilot, and do you have self-driving on your Model 3? I've got a Model 3.
Good questions. I'd say 200,000 kilometers of that was with AP1 cars in an S and an X. I'd say 90% of it, 95% of it would have been autopilot with AP1. Everything else would have been with full self-driving or AP2 or greater. Yes, I've always bought full self-driving when I bought the cars. I'm a tech nerd. I love that kind of stuff, and I pre-purchased it when I purchased the car, knowing that it would come over time. It was also just an investment in Tesla. I understand a lot of people can't do that, and I completely understand that. And but for example, so we've got our Model 3. It came with AP 2.5. We've got the retrofit for the full self-driving car computer, and we're starting to see some of those changes develop in the cars. I use it. I use it all the time. I also have seen, I've gotten very familiar with all those kilometers, what to expect in terms of when it doesn't behave, and situations that it can occur. Basically, at any time, it can misbehave. But there's certain key situations, going under bridges or tunnels or a sign, it can break all of a sudden. AP1 and 2, so to answer that question before I go too much further, AP1 was the original autopilot computer in Model S and X, pre-Model 3. It was based on the Mobileye, thank you, Mobileye technology.
And that was up until about 2018.
Yes, that was about till 2018, and then Tesla and Mobileye went their separate ways because of some of the high-profile accidents that occurred. Mobileye said we need to slow down. Elon said, no, we need to accelerate. They separated the ways, and Elon developed his own autopilot with NVIDIA. That's AP2 and AP 2.5. That's an NVIDIA chipset. And then full self-driving or hardware 3, it's called both. That's the Tesla chip that they've developed in-house that is the most advanced currently full self-driving computer on the market that they are giving to anyone who's prepaid for full self-driving, or if you buy a car today, it's supposed to come with it.
So you'll know which one you have depending on the model and the year.
Yes, and if you're unsure, you can actually check in the car now. If you open up the software tab in the controls, it will, and there's, I can't remember what it's called. There's a button there you can click, and it gives you all the different options you have, including do you have premium audio, do you have full self-driving prepaid, and then what computer is in your car. And also if you have an SRX, what MCU, that big 17-inch screen in the center of your car, if you have version 1 or version 2, because there's, as Tesla does, they change as they develop. So there's multiple variations in different cars. So it gets confusing at times, and I completely understand.
So I've been debating, I didn't buy self-driving, I bought autopilot, and I'm now thinking of upgrading. It's $4,000. Will that result then in the better system? Do you know offhand?
Over time, short answer, yes. But how can I word this? Let me see how I can say this properly here. Yes, it will, because if you don't prepay for full self-driving and you don't have that hardware, you will always be on the 2.5, and that will eventually hit a wall in terms of development because they're going beyond the capabilities of that hardware.
Kind of like how Autopilot 1 did.
Yeah, kind of like how Autopilot 1 did. They hit a max and they wanted to expand beyond the capability of that hardware.
It only learns a certain way.
Yeah, it only learns a certain way. And there's big changes coming in the software that only will work on the new full self-driving computer and if you paid for full self-driving. So for example, Elon announced last night on Thursday that Canadians are getting the stop at traffic lights and stop signs. So that is only if you've prepaid for full self-driving and you have the hardware 3 installed in your vehicle. And that's what that will give you, and that will evolve over time as the technology and data from the fleet, that is Tesla's fleet, improves the tech. So the way I've been telling people when they say, should I get full self-driving, shouldn't I? If you have any intention of using full self-driving in the future, when you can afford it, buy it. It's not going to get cheaper anymore. It's only going to get more expensive. As it gets better, they're going to keep increasing that price to show the value of that technology. July 1st is the next big bump of approximately $1,000 US, so it's going to go up. Robert, you might be locked in at 4 because of that window you bought it in, but other owners, if you don't have, they've changed the program so much as they've evolved. There's multiple variations on price depending on when you bought your vehicle. So just if you're ready and you have the money and you want it, get it before it goes up again. That's all I can recommend. And
Okay.
be aware. Yeah, see, someone just said it. I was going there. Jose, you mentioned it. There will be an AP4. It's inevitable. And there will be an AP5 and there will be an AP6.
So annoying.
It's kind of like cell phones or a computer. When you buy it, it's out of date the next day. I mean, this is what Tesla's doing to the automotive industry and the technology of the automotive industry. Buy for when you are ready and for what they're promising for that point. And if you always wait for the future, you're always going to be waiting for the next iteration. So it's kind of like buy when you're ready and you can afford it. If you can't, I understand subscription service is coming, but of course, it's kind of like financing versus paying cash. You will pay more over time if you do subscribe to full self-driving versus just paying for it. But of course, you may not have that chunk of cash to just drop into a piece of software. So I hear subscription is coming this year as well. And AP4, yeah, it'll be mind-blowingly different. I can't even imagine what they're working on with AP4. I know it's going to be something that no one's thinking of. And if Elon's putting rocket thrusters in a car, maybe it's the 4th dimension, going up instead of just driving along 2D roads. Who knows? I mean, if the man can build a rocket that can take off, dock, and re-enter the Earth's atmosphere and land first stage on a small barge floating at sea, do we really think he's not going to figure out how to drive a car? At some point, it's just going to take time.
Thank you.
No problem. I missed a question. Tires, high profile tires. Yes, 45 PSI pressure as well. On the Model 3, the high profile tires are 42, but I run them at 45 on road trips. One tip there, if you don't get nitrogen in your tires, which I haven't done, and you're running off just standard air, and you're doing a road trip, keep an eye on your tire pressures every day. If you have them at 45 PSI on a cold day in the morning and you go up into the mountains and it's 37 degrees in LA, those tire pressures are going to be high. You got to let some air out of the tires and then vice versa. If you're in a hot and you enter a cold climate, you're probably going to be low and you need to add air pressure to keep a nice steady. You don't have to be nuts on it, but definitely keep an eye on it day over day. Sorry, I'm just reading questions here. Mars on AP10. Yeah, right, exactly. Will we be going to Mars on AP10? Maybe we should shift out of all Tesla mode. What?
Nothing.
Oh, you're just telling me to read? I'm being tapped. Oh, like I said, I'm talking Tesla because I own 2 Teslas. If you have questions about Leafs or Bolts or any other EVs, feel free to ask. A lot of this translates into any electric vehicle. I mean, granted, a lot of them don't have full self-driving now, but a majority of people are having questions on that. So totally, I understand. Thanks, Jim. Jim Stanton's just leaving. She's just saying goodbye. So thanks for joining us again today, Jim. It was great to see you again. The other thing I want to say is it's definitely not all about Tesla. I want to make sure I iterate that. It's about electrification of transportation. And definitely the majority of people want to talk about Tesla, but it's definitely not about all of the different options out there. So feel free to ask on any of the electric vehicles out there. Question from Don. So is it different with nitrogen as far as variation pressures with altitude and temp? Yes. I'm just reading what my wife is writing here.
No.
Oh, no. No, I'm not saying that. So yes, you might be able to answer that
What,
better for me.
nitrogen?
Nitrogen versus air. It's basically the
Well,
way
air, air is 73% nitrogen. So whenever they talk about 100% nitrogen versus air, you got to remember that air is mostly nitrogen anyway. But
nitrogen is less susceptible to temperature variations.
100%.
Less susceptible. So if you put nitrogen, and we saw this in a previous car, we just haven't done it in the Teslas. Nitrogen, when we were driving from the Northwest Territories -30 to the south when it's +30, you see a 1 to 2 PSI variation with nitrogen, whereas with air, you can see a massive shift of 5+ PSI on that as the density of air shifts with temperature.
That's weird though. It was really that much?
It was that much, yeah. Yeah.
But it's also a pain to have nitrogen in your tires because whenever you go somewhere to fill it up with nitrogen and they don't.
Well, you just
now
put
it's all
air,
messed
which
up.
then you got to get it drained and refill with nitrogen. Yeah.
I've got a question regarding electrification through up to Alaska. Have you heard of any joint ventures between the U.S. government and Canadian government about highway to Alaska, the Alaska Highway?
Not current. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
Sorry, I apologize. I cut you off as you were finishing a sentence there.
Not currently.
Not currently. The biggest thing I've heard when I've talked to the different charging partners or different Tesla and then also ChargePoint and Flow is going into areas that are more remote, like Alaska, where you don't have a large population that wants to use the route. They definitely need more outside support to do it. So government funds or rich billionaires that want to throw money at a non-used route. The biggest thing I can say is, I'm going back to Tesla, I'm sorry guys, but the Tesla very much subsidizes their supercharger network, so they can't justify putting a supercharger in the middle of nowhere that gets 3 people a month and they use $200 in power and then they get a $7,000 bill for peak demand.
What about
for
people
pulling
like
that
Plug
power.
in America? What do
Yeah,
they do?
well, that's funded off of the Volkswagen $2 billion. And, so it came with a third-party infusion of cash to grow. That's simplifying it. I know that's very much simplifying the situation. I understand that. But it's finding that model to fit long-distance travel to all different areas. I know the government of Canada through NRCan, through those, what's it called, Glenn? The program for supercharging that, for level 3 charging.
Well, it's all dumped under IZ.
Yes.
IZ, I think, but yeah, Transport Canada, and they kind of pay a third for every level 3 charger is put up pretty much anywhere in the country.
Yeah. And that program is going to have some very big benefits because of requests from EV owners that I can't talk about, but keep an eye on the news about some new charging things coming out. It's routes. It's very exciting.
Thanks, James.
My pleasure. Wow, there's one way up there. Sorry, my wife's got, oh, it's a wall plug. My wife's got plug share up and she's looking at all the chargers in Alaska. And they're growing. There's a level 3
There's
right
one on
there.
the Beaufort Sea.
And just one thing
it's
about
gonna take time.
nitrogen is that it's a much drier for your tires, which doesn't have the temperature fluctuations. Right, there's nothing in there to expand or contract.
Yes, Eric Jenkins, isn't the Cybertruck going to have a 240 volt receptacle? Yes, it'll have an ability to pull from that battery pack, they said. It'll be like a portable generator in the back of the truck. Thanks, Robert. Yes, Costco, that's a good tip. Costco, when you buy tires there, they do fill it up with nitrogen. I believe they also do free refill too, but correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
I pulled up with my Leaf. I had a damaged tire. They fixed it, but they topped up all 4 tires. They only have nitrogen there. So if you have air in your tires, nitrogen goes in anyway.
Yep.
And they did it without even looking at my membership card. They you pull up by the bays, they come out. Somebody sees you sitting there. They come out. They ask you what pressure. You tell them. They set the machine. It beeps when it's full. They do all four wheels, and you drive away, no charge.
Nice.
And they, like I said, when I was there, they didn't ask for my card. They just
They
went
just
and
did it for you. That's
So
really
that was good. And with my Leaf, when I had it, I didn't touch the tire. I didn't have to fill up or reduce pressure for about 4 years. I never
Exactly.
touched my tires, which is, wow, that's a big savings. Because tire
No
pressure is
kidding.
a pain, you know.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Another question here, any tips on upgrading a Model 3 to a Model Y? Not sure exactly what you mean, other than the fact that, I mean,
Like selling and buying.
selling and buying, trade-in values you can get from Tesla, tesla.com/trade-in. You can actually get a trade-in value online now for your Tesla. You can also do it when you purchase another vehicle. You can say, are you trading in another one on your account? And they'll give you a quote. Some people in Canada, I think sometimes it's better to sell privately with the wholesale values on cars these days. But don't quote me on that. Definitely do your own research. Model Y, I've been tempted to look into it personally because of that heat pump. So it's more efficient in cold temperatures. And obviously it's got all the latest tech from Tesla in it. So it's got all the latest design changes, soundproofing, et cetera, which I believe will make it into the 3. And then ultimately the S and X should also start to see these improvements as they come out.
And it's got the octo valve.
And it's got the octo valve, yeah.
Yeah, and further to that, if you have bought your Model 3 in Canada and you've got incentive money from provincial and federal governments, you can do trade in or sell the vehicle off within the first year. You're going to have to pay some of that or all that money back. So make sure you roll that into your calculations.
Yes, good. Thank you, Glenn. That's a really good point. Yeah, sorry. We've got a family get together on Zoom to now join. So I just wanted to, is there any other questions that people had before we go, or any pressing questions?
I think that's been really good, James. It's really awesome. And you had said, you know, roughly 2 o'clock, and we're past that already. So what a great flow of pertinent and valuable information for everybody. Really, I've learned some stuff here, and it really just adds even more ideas and keeps the juices flowing, which is what it's all about for future discussions. You two take care of yourselves now.
Thank you.
For sure. Thanks, guys. Great seeing everyone, and we'll try to join these all the time.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.
Okay, this is all good. I see that on the chat room, James has left information, just I guess the connection for the Victoria EV Club website. He's got it on the chat there if you need it. Link there for those of you who need to know where to find it. And I think we can move on here. Gary is waiting patiently in the wings at his Route 66 movie emporium. I'm not sure if, is that a drive-in cinema you got going there? Glenn, take it away. You're muted, Glenn. You're still on mute.
Yeah, the graphic that Jim set up for me, I think he was riffing on the whole traveling and that sort of thing. And I have ridden a lot of Route 66 on my motorcycle, so it's right on, Jim. Thanks. And yeah, what I tend to do during my week is I look around the internet and YouTube, and I try and find good information that can be shared out. And there is some really good stuff out there. Last time we were here, I spoke about a guy with his PhD as an electrochemist, and he was talking, and that's when I was talking about battery day and what is potentially coming up in the future. And his name is Ewan McTuck, and he runs a site called Plug Life TV. And he's put in a 2-episode video streams, and I'll go onto my screen here. We're not going to play the videos. Let's see here. But if you look where my cursor is, so he's got these two here, watt barriers, balancing battery raw materials. And you put them together, you've got a 21-minute sort of two-part video. And these are pretty awesome. He lives in the United Kingdom, where he works in the battery industry. But he talks two phases. The part one, he talks about everything that goes into lithium-ion batteries. They really should be called nickel graphite because that's most of the weight in a battery. But the lithium-ion is talking about the anode in the battery itself. So in this first video, he's going into what goes into an EV battery, where those things come from, talks a little bit about cost, but he also talks about how this can be done fairly easily. So you'll have somebody turn around and say, oh, well, we'll never have enough lithium to make every car on the planet an electric car. He kind of puts that pretty much to rest in that he calculates there is enough lithium available in the system already to make 1.2 billion cars on the planet, each with a 40 kilowatt battery, electric. So that knocks that one pretty hard on the head, because right now on the planet there are 1.1 billion vehicles. So lithium is not going to be one of the items that's a problem. And in fact, none of the materials that goes into a battery is going to be a problem at all. So that's kind of the first one there, balancing out the raw materials, figuring out what's in it. And then his second bit, he goes into what do you do with batteries when they come out of an electric vehicle? So you take an electric vehicle, the battery in it, you run it down to 80% or 70%, and then it's no longer useful for an electric vehicle. But there's still a ton of energy in there. You take a 50 kilowatt Tesla Model 3 SR Plus battery at 80%, that's still 40 kilowatts of battery, and you can either use that whole battery as a block for home storage, for your own wind, your own solar, or whatever. 40 kilowatts, that's about a day and a half in a house running full bore on it. If you took it down to emergency mode where you're only trying to use 10 kilowatts a day, you've got a lot of time in there. And if you got your own solar, you're also topping it up during the day too. So and that just helps the grid all the way along. But once you're done with second life in a battery being used for storage, at the end of that, you can go to recycling. And he talks about some companies around the planet that are doing 100% recycling of EV batteries. And you want to do 100% recycling because all the material in there is quite useful. And the lithium is probably the least useful, actually, but because it's very cheap and very plentiful. Cobalt, more important to get out. There's a lot of graphite on the planet as well, and the copper is useful as well. So in there, he gets into kind of like the circular economy of batteries. So you could take the batteries out. You can import used batteries from another place after they've already gone through their second life, their 20 or 30 years in stationary storage. Bring it into a country, put it through processing, take all the valuable materials out, build new batteries with that, then send those batteries back on to an electric vehicle maker to then get put into another electric vehicle, and then you sell those electric vehicles on. And you're doing value added every step of the process while still using pretty much all the same stuff. So yeah, it turns into a circular economy for the battery, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, that's what those two videos are like. They are about, rather. And those are kind of two I saw in the last 10 days that I thought everybody should have an awareness about. because when you are talking to other people who may not be in the EV world, and they want to talk about, you know, what happens to the batteries after, you'll have answers for them, or you can just send them a link. So, any questions?
So Glenn, one question. Now Tesla talks about this 1,000,000-mile battery, so that lasts as long as the car, right?
Well, in fact, arguably, the batteries that are currently in somebody's Tesla, and I'd probably argue same thing for if you've got a Kona or a Soul, in any of the second generation longer range cars, arguably all those batteries are going to be in those cars for the life of the car. The rest of the car will fall apart before you start getting down to the 80% distance. Some of that has to do with the chemistries, better chemistries of the batteries. A lot of it has to do with how many cycles you put that entire battery as a performing block through. A 24 kilowatt leaf goes through, you know, if it's going up and down to its full charge, will go through twice as many cycles for a given distance as a Tesla with 50 kilowatts, right? So you kind of use that part there. The 1,000,000-mile battery, when this does get released, yeah, I mean, it'll certainly outlive the life of any private individual using that vehicle. But then again, 1,000,000-mile battery is really meant for business. So it's meant for vehicles that put on a lot of kilometers every year. And that is things like taxis, Ubers, you know, those sort of services where you are going to turn around and put 100,000 miles on every year, and you want to have 10 years out of that battery. So that's where a 1,000,000-mile battery really kicks in. Having said that, those 1,000,000-mile batteries, when they do, because they will be a whole lot more robust than current generation battery, when those batteries do end up in the second life market for stationary storage, they're going to be around a long time. So yeah, it's very exciting. But thank you for the question, Ariel.
Yeah, the add-on question is that what I hear is that when you get a 1,000,000-mile battery, you don't need any wall backup batteries. You can use a car battery because it can take so many charge cycles there.
Well, that certainly is possible. I mean, you could do vehicle to grid for your own home, and you would have a whole lot more willingness to put those extra cycles on your vehicle's battery if you did have a 1,000,000-mile battery. So yeah, that's a good point.
Glenn, an overall video question. There's thousands of channels out there with EV advice. For somebody who's starting out, fully charged, transport evolved, where should they go?
Those are two great examples. Fully charged is really kind of cool because it's been an ongoing 10-year odyssey for a guy who didn't know a whole lot about electric vehicles, but knew to get out and talk to a lot of different people. So if you go to his channel, you can go back and you can see exactly how EVs have evolved over the last decade. And he doesn't do just EVs, he does energy as well, and the grid. And in fact, if people are interested in the grid, I can recommend one he just put out recently. About 8 years ago, he went to the UK grid control room where they sit there and they're balancing off, you know, the little bit of wind, a little bit of solar they had then against the huge coal generators and the 2 or 3 big nuclear plants that they have in the UK. And he saw how everything happened. And then he's interviewing a guy now, 8 years later, and they have a whole lot of artificial intelligence working with a ton of data, mainly in weather, that predicts what sort of days they're going to have. So they can sit there and they can run more and more days on renewables, such as solar and wind. and they're doing that more and more and more. So yeah, fully charged, great channel. Transport Evolved, they're really good as well. They work very hard at what they do down in Portland. So yeah, they're quite good. Plug Life, if you like the technical side of things, those are good places to start. And like I say, every week, you know, I'll give Jim a few things to post up. Like I say, curated stuff that is good information. So that's what I got on those two for this week. Over to you, Dave.
Surely we have some more questions folks might want to ask Glenn about his. Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
Not a question, but the same guy that did the thing about the battery, that was like episode 24. Episode 3 is really interesting. It starts off at the beginning about the history of some old electric cars. And he talks about the one that he had in 94 or 96. Really, definitely worth watching.
Yeah, I mean, he's been one of these guys who was going through university at the right time when a lot of this stuff was just starting up. So he's kind of been living it all. And he's a brilliant guy. They're more and more interesting talks on the web about different things. So yeah, we'll try and bring the interesting stuff to you.
Yeah, go ahead. Carrie, is that you?
Yeah. I'm still a little out of place, all the Teslas, but I've got a Kona, and I'm quite happy with so far. But and I'm new at it. And on the batteries, I still haven't had a real good answer as to whether you should let it go way down and then recharge, or just leave it until it goes down, or what is the suggested, you know?
Well, sorry, what sort of car did you say you had again?
A Kona.
Kona, okay, a brand new Kona, awesome car.
Yes, it's 19.
Yeah, so you're going to get that's a good sized battery. It's a 62 kilowatt or 64 kilowatt battery. Take it out and use it for your day to day. Let it charge up around 80%. Recharge it again at 20, and that's more for your convenience. But it will also do the best to keep your battery happy. Now, I say that. But then again, the way the batteries are set up in an electric vehicle these days, they do a couple of different things. Is they try not to overstress the battery to start with. Plus, okay, so the individual cells, you may have this much energy, but they're trying to only use that much out of it. Plus, it has a battery management system.
Yep.
And it'll keep you from going, you know, keeping it too high, and it'll also keep you from keeping it too low. It has its own internal buffers in it. You know, most second generation electric vehicles are also coming along with active thermal conditioning of the battery. So you'll go out into your driveway on a hot day, and you'll hear fans going in your car.
Mm-hmm.
Battery making sure it's taking care of itself. So, yeah.
I have found that I've found a couple of things, like with the battery. I charge it to the fully charged because I'm not using a charger one. I've got a 2 at home, so I'm just using that. But it just seems I have to go so long before I charge it. I'm wondering if it's going to come back up. I've already passed what they call the 500-mile club or kilometer club. It's already got over 500 miles on a charge, or K's on a charge. So
yeah, I mean, it's not like you know, first generation of sort of rechargeable batteries we all, you know, experienced in the 80s and 90s. Nickel metal, NiCads. NiCads used to have a memory in them.
Yeah.
Sort of different formulations. That doesn't exist with the current batteries. You know, so take it out and use it. do try not to leave it at 100% very often. I personally, I'll only charge, past 90% if I'm going on a long trip.
Ah, okay.
My day-to-day, I charge it to 80.
Well, the thing is I've got it set so I do it off time, like I do it from 10 at night to whenever it's finished. And it sets its own time. Like I'd have to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning if I wanted to start it off at 80. I might be able to set on a regular, I've never tried that. It's like if I use the fast charge, it won't charge, I can't charge over 80. It's set for that. But
any other Kona owners here?
Pardon?
I'm just asking if there are any other Kona owners here.
On my Soul, you can set it to stop charging at any percentage. It's in 10% increments.
Oh, maybe I can. I just I know.
And you can set it to time it to charge at certain times.
Yes.
But if it's charging on DC, I set mine to 100% because the only time I'm charging on DC is when I'm going to charge it and then take off again and run it down. But on the level 2, I set it for 80% and that's it.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll do that.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Carrie, the Soul has exactly the same powertrain as the Kona.
Yeah. Yes, it has exactly the same Kona, right? Exactly. Or the.
So yeah, and in BC we don't have any time of use charging, so I mean it's better to charge your car at night because it's cooler.
Well, that's why I say I do it I set it. Well, also when I bought the car, they suggested, with hydro and our smart meters, pretty soon they're going to start saying, oh, if you start charging during the day, during the high hours, they're going to want more money for your electricity. So do it in the off hours. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, I could probably talk for about 2 hours on that topic. And for Cold Notes version, it won't be happening anytime soon.
No, I know.
What about the owner's manual? Does it not give you advice?
Oh, yeah, but you got 2 years to read it. Yes.
And it's written in Korean English too, so it's really hard to follow.
Some of it is, yeah.
And a lot of it's cut and pasted from the ice cars.
Yeah.
But if your software is the same, the drivetrain is the same as mine.
That's
if
right.
The software is the same. You can set it to start charging at any particular time and stop at a particular time and start and stop at certain levels of battery charge.
Yeah, that's right. I can. And what I've got to do is figure out how long, like if it's down to a third, how long it takes, and then just set it for that many hours, and then it'll stop automatically. So.
No, you don't set it for time, set it for percentage.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. Yeah. Set it to 80. Okay. Good idea.
Glenn, can you unshare your desktop so we go back to full screen?
Oh, let's see if I can.
Before you do that, Carrie, take a look at the screen, and there's one down there that's charging your EV battery to 100% damage your battery on the plug life thing, and go and watch those. This fella does plug life. It's fantastic. It's a Dr. Ewan McTuck or something. Scottish.
Well, they say that as long as you're using the 200, like a class 2 charger, it's no problem going to 100. But on the fast charge, you don't want to go to 100. The type 1 chargers, they tell it.
Well, I would still suggest that you take a look at that, because generally you don't want to charge anything to 100% if you can avoid it. For battery management, that's why they never let you, like if the battery that's in the car or in your phone, they never let you go to full 0 or full 100 usually. And because there's things called dendrites that form on the anode, I think it is, or is it the cathode, which deteriorate the battery. So when those are worst, when you leave it at 100% charge or 0. So most of the time, your sweet spot is between 40 and 80%. So try to keep your battery in that range. Unless you're going a long trip, you can take it to 100 because very, very shortly, it's going to be down well below 100 anyway if you're doing a long trip.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
And those dendrites can be a real pain in the anode.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Still looking if we have a question here. Oh, somebody has to go. No worries. Ian and Lorraine, cheers. Any other questions or comments we have here for Glenn? General open commentary, for good or bad.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed this
good.
meeting. There's one other thing I haven't found out yet, and I'm an older fellow, so I don't have all this modern stuff of apps and all this kind of stuff. So I'm wondering, is there a card you can get for using charging stations on a trip? Like I went to the Petro Canada that has the charger out on the Pat Bay Highway there, or not Pat, yes, going out to by the lake. They got the charging station now, and nobody knew how to use it or what it cost or anything. Well, no, they did tell me it was 27 cents a minute, but they had nothing to do with it. It's just a lease space from them. So is there any kind of card you can get? Can you use for charging, for using the charging station?
Yeah, you can get a Greenlots charge, or card rather, a flow card. And as Heather was saying earlier, BC Hydro has a card as well.
Okay, and flow card, because that's the charger I got for the house, is a flow.
Yeah.
Well, I got a flow charge now, so they should have, you'd think they'd say, do you want a green card to go with it?
Well, you don't need one for the one at the house, and you don't need one for Petro Canada. Petro Can just takes your credit card.
Do they, most of them?
The Petro Canada ones do, yes.
Oh, okay.
And it's 55 cents a minute now, not 27.
That makes
sense. If you go to Motorized, they sell a multiple card that has 4 or 5 different services on it.
Who's that one?
If you go to Motorized,
Motorized
or Sydney,
okay.
They have a multiple card.
Thank you very much.
The public chargers in the parking lots downtown, I've activated them with a credit card, but you get a zero balance. They're free, but you need a credit card to activate the charger level 2 in those parking garages downtown.
Okay.
I'm sure some other cards may work, I don't know, but I've always just had a credit card, and you tap it on the screen, it turns on, you see a little green light, and then you can plug in. And you come back, there might even be a number there with a charge amount, but it doesn't appear on your credit card.
Oh, and is that like credit? You're talking Visa, not debit, eh?
Yeah, right, Visa. Can't be a debit, it has to be a credit card.
Okay, thank you. That helps very much.
Jim, that's at the City Victoria lots, and you can use a credit card as, like I use my Flow card all the time, but you can use a credit card too?
That's how I've activated it in the past. I just tap the credit card to activate the machine.
Oh, okay. I'll have to try it down Dallas Road here. See how it works down there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyway, any more questions for Glenn? He's in an answering mood, I can tell.
Hi, it's Paul here. We bought an X about a month or so ago, and I heard somebody say something about rebates. We never really looked into the rebate thing. Is there any available?
For which?
For a Tesla X?
Oh, Tesla.
Straight up, no.
Pass the cost under $55,000.
Yeah, the initial cost of the car, whatever it was, depending on the federal or provincial, but it had to. The model had to be somewhere starting 45 and then ending after that. So no, the Tesla X has not had any money behind it, and we as a club are personally keen on there being incentives for any electric vehicle. I'd actually love to see them, both federal and provincial governments, just waive their damn taxes. So, how much simpler can it be?
Well, especially
tax on the car, you pay for the rest, but no taxes.
Not enough bureaucracy to keep somebody employed.
Well, even if they would waive the luxury taxes, it would be a major help.
Yeah, the luxury taxes were a bit of a kick in the sensitive places. But yeah, sorry about that. Nice car though.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I just the luxury tax was a huge hit on the car though, and yeah. So anyway, it's okay.
Well, I'm personally really hoping, and we have talked to government and suggested that when things like the Cybertruck come out and the cheaper of the two, cheaper of the Model Ys, right? So when an SR Plus version of the Model Y comes out, we suggested that those should be able to get some sort of incentive to people, especially the bloody Cybertruck, because we're trying to get dirty trucks off the road because of all the positive environmental hits. And why aren't incentivizing those? Because between SUVs and trucks, you know, that is something like 63% of all the vehicles sold to the average private individual. It's stupid, but it's the way it is. Yeah, love to see those be incentivized.
Wouldn't say it's necessarily stupid, Glenn, but I mean, the government's got to get money from Summers, and it's got to, with the billions it's going through with COVID, it's going to have to start recovering some of that pretty soon. So don't.
We're not going down that road today, Don. Not today. Besides which, there's $10,000 per electric vehicle on the road in positive environmental and health benefits, per that study we saw this week.
I've got a question for the Leaf owners who are here. It is said that you shouldn't charge with a 110, or at least by charging with a 110, you charge for a much longer period of time. And apparently there's a little cooling pump that runs to cool the charger and the onboard charger and the inverter, I guess. And I'm wondering if anyone has ever heard a motor running to with their Leaf to circulate anything in the vehicle while it's plugged in. I've been listening for it and I can't hear any hum of anything whatsoever. It may just because it's too cool, or I don't know if the fan comes on when it's a certain temperature, or if it's so quiet and efficient that I can't hear it anyway. Any experience, anybody?
I think there is a cooling fan, but the battery has to get warm for that to happen, and my battery just never gets that warm. I think a couple of times I've heard it. And it's just an air cooling. It's not a liquid cool pump. It's just like a rad. I think.
Yeah,
it's hard to discern whether. Sorry?
Yeah, I'm trying to think in 3.5 years of having my Leaf if I ever heard anything running while I was charging.
Yeah, well, for me, it wasn't while charging. It was like when returning home from heavy use on a hot day, and those little temperature bars on the left side that show your battery temperature got up. I think it was at 5 bars or something. It's about the highest I ever saw it. It rarely gets there in this climate. We kind of live in a perfect climate for batteries. If you have one without liquid cooling, like the older Leafs, or even the newer ones, I'm not sure if they're coming out with liquid cool yet or not, but.
I don't think there's a liquid cooled Leaf. They're not even technically air cooled. They're passively cooled.
They don't, well, okay, then the fan I heard must have been related to ventilation.
Ventilation, or there's cooling on the inverter and the charger. But the battery pack is just a big block of batteries in a steel box, and it's sealed up.
Yeah, okay, well, I think that's the best answer I've heard.
The battery in my RAV there, it's got air spaces around the batteries, and there's 2 fairly powerful fans pulling air in. If you can see right behind my head there, just above there's a vent, and it sucks air in through there and across the battery, and every module has a vent underneath it, so the air goes past and cools it. So that's air cooled. The Leaf battery is just a big box bolted on the bottom. It's really quite amazingly poorly done.
So that would have.
Eric, you'll be glad to know the first sort of BEV that Toyota is kicking out is a Lexus, and you've just described exactly how it's going to cool its battery. So they haven't moved on from your car.
20 years ago. Yeah, but that said, that battery is 20 years old.
Yeah,
exactly. It's got 126,000 miles to over 200,000 kilometers on it, and but it doesn't fast charge. It's only, well, I've got it on a J1772, but it paddle charged at 18 amps.
Dave, I've heard that fan too coming home on a hot summer day, and the fan's running for a while when you pull the car into the driveway.
Yeah, so
that's cooling. It's not necessarily cooling the battery as much as it is cooling the inverter and the motor.
Okay, so that's okay. That must be the inverter then.
Yeah, but what they say is that there's also what's his name from Motorize and a fellow from Vancouver, both referred to some internal circulation, liquid circulation of something that runs. And I just wondering if anyone's ever heard it running. Anyway, okay, thanks guys, appreciate it.
Yeah. Anyone else got to chime in here? We have a few minutes left. Unlike some weeks where we can't get people to stop talking, like me in particular.
I'll have another question with respect to chargers. Has anybody had any problematic chargers they've installed at home? Anyone that's had models that are more reliable than others, perhaps?
When I bought my flow charger for home, well, and we keep calling it chargers. It's not a charger, but EVSC. Both Julian and the guy whose name I've forgotten, they said that they had no trouble with those. They had no warranty returns on them compared to all the other ones. So I'm quite pleased with the flow.
Yeah, Don, I think the only ones we've heard about are the Zapit chargers, and those get immediately replaced by the company. But
I was talking to an electrician the other day, and he's installed, I think, some flows, and there's another one. I guess it's what the heck? What's the other common one? Anyway, but he said the flows night and day for the construction. It's a much better built, solid, heavy-duty components compared to the other chargers. ChargePoint, I think, was the other ones that he said they're just really light, plasticky things, and doesn't expect them to last very long.
That's the same from my electrician. He was looking, he was quite impressed at the physical quality of the charger itself.
Yeah, Sun Country Highway at the bakery, the electrician was impressed with how beefy the innards were. And that one's pretty straight up. There's nothing but on off. There's nothing to do. You just plug in. It doesn't have any screen. The chargers at the library are put in by PowerTech, the BC Hydro's past effort at doing a retail front with chargers. And I'm not sure what those machines are, but one of them's been down for better part of about a year now. And the city of Colwood claims there's no more parts available, or they're very, very difficult to find, not to mention expensive. So they're waiting for the next round of funding where they might be able to just upgrade them to another charger and get by. So we've only got one out of the two working there now. And those failed after they started to fail. They did have some parts, but they started to fail after about 3 years. They would repair them until they ran out of parts. So that was not so good. But PowerTech's not the charger. Is it Blink maybe? Do they make chargers?
Yeah, Blink was the charger, and PowerTech was the company BC Hydro brought in to help them do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Flow is owned by BC or Quebec Hydro, I think, or at least it's one of the owners of Flow. So that's one reason they're probably as well designed as they are. It's one of the few Canadian makes. I think Juice Box might be partially made in Canada too.
They should be fairly cheap because their just a switch. It turns the power on when it knows there's a car attached. When I have charge my RAV at home, I have a welder plug on the end of a cord, and I plug it in, and that's it. That means that the two terminals on the hose end are hot all the time it's plugged in. So if you stuck your tongue in the hole, you might be able to get a shock. I mean, that's what that's all about. My RAV4 had contactless charging. It had its induction charging. The actual paddle you stuck in has a coil in it. It's totally enclosed in plastic. There's nowhere where you can find a bare wire short of using an axe on it, because people are paranoid they're going to get electrocuted. The thing's going to burst into flames if you go through the car wash, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I think Carol Mellett should come up give us a comment after her chuckle at the thought of you sticking your tongue in that socket.
But just like kids who stick their tongues on hydro poles in the winter.
I just want to mention that we had the same experience at Motorized when we got our Flow, and by then they had stopped selling all the other brands and just stuck with Flow, because Flow, they had no returns. With the others, they had warranty returns. And ours is a year old plus, and we've never had a problem. It works perfectly.
Yeah.
Just be warned when you buy the Flow, which I did. You might believe you get a grant from the BC government or BC Hydro. You don't. It doesn't qualify.
We got one.
Well, I didn't. I got a letter saying you don't qualify.
That's because it was you, Fred.
It's all about timing, because we got the full grant, pardon me, short of 75 cents. $749.25 was.
Maybe I should go back to them.
And it came, I was amazed, because you think of governments being slow. We got approval in about 2 days. And once I sent in the documentation, it was in my bank account inside of a couple of days. It was very impressive.
I'll go back to them, and I'm going to race.
Well, actually, I got that grant too, but it was not for I put in a Flow, but it was a BC Hydro refund. It was through BC Hydro.
Yeah, BC Hydro turned me down though, initially.
You must have missed it, because I had to refile everything. They said they lost everything. They never got my paperwork.
Oh, okay.
So I redid it, and I got it.
In my garage is an AeroVironment charger that says Nissan on it, because that's the only charger that I was aware of you could buy. When we bought the car, it was the one they mentioned, and it's made by Clipper Corporation, which is the same company as built the chargers for the EV1 back in the day. And the AeroVironment was an affiliated company or something. Well, anyway, Sun Country Highway is a Clipper unit, actually. And that AeroVironment unit, level 2, is working with the adapter now for my Tesla and the Leaf. So I'm charging both cars, 8.5 years, nothing done, nothing but click on and off, and perfectly reliable. It was.
Yeah, I've got a Schrader on mine, 4.5 years, and it is a really stupidly simple box. You know,
that's what it should be.
Yeah, and it was all I could get from Home Depot when I was getting my Leaf, and stuck it on a wall. And it's a dumb box. You can't talk to it. So if you have a smart car, you can have a dumb box. If you've got a dumb car, get a smart box.
So but they're all now, when checking their pricing, they're all about $1,000 to $1,300 now. The $1,300 ones have the Wi-Fi, and the $1,000 ones don't.
That's
right. 1,000.
Minus the rebate.
And then minus the rebate. And the rebate, is the rebate what, $350 now? Or is it
$350 twice? It's got to be installed. So it's $350 for the unit and $350 for the install. And I think you have to do both to get the whole thing. Something like that.
And you have to get an electrical permit and get it inspected.
Yes.
Okay.
That's all.
Any competent electrician can do both for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Except mine wouldn't get a permit, because he said if we get this inspected, it'll cost you more to upgrade things.
I must say that in 2012, when we got the Nissan Leaf, we got the Schneider from West Home Depot, I can't remember. And the electrician who installed the solar panels also installed a charger. We charged Leaf and Tesla from the same charger for 5 years, no problems, no rebates, but it was part of Solar Colwood program anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Looks like Jim wants to say something.
Not well. I've got some housekeeping stuff, but I can save it to the end.
Okay.
Well, we're getting to the end, unless people want to. We're bantering here about chargers, which is great. If anybody's got some new juicy information we can discuss, Glenn, thanks very much for your present information about the videos and feeds, and looking forward to more absolutely wonderful references and upgrades on our knowledge base.
I was thinking we should check in with Eric to see whether he's learning from this.
I'd like to check in with Eric to see if he's learned anything today.
Not me, the other Eric. That one.
Absolutely, all sorts of things.
Well, good.
Glenn, I did take a look at those 2 videos you talked about.
Yeah.
And they were kind of interesting too. I pre-programmed, as you said, get to know what we're talking about. So.
Absolutely. So if, Jim, why don't you go ahead with those housekeeping items, and
Okay.
then we'll just do a real quick last call for any last desperate questions.
All right. We have always scheduled these online meetings to coincide with our normal bi-monthly schedule. This is kind of an extra one because there was an extra Saturday in there. We would have been going back to Machosen next week for the Machosen Community House meeting. But the board has decided to wait until we move to phase 3, at least, of the reopening before we start considering physical meetings again. So we'll be back here next week. If anybody has anything specific they'd like to talk about, just send us a note at that Victoria EV Club, and we'll see what we can put together. The other thing we've been talking about is the Drive Electric Week is coming up first week of September, or right after Labor Day. I can't remember exactly when it is. And there'd been some internal discussion about moving the plug-in challenge to then, but because nobody really knows how much people will want to be moving around and whether local businesses will be looking for people to come to their businesses or trying to just cope with whatever they've got, we don't know that yet. So if anybody's got any ideas in terms of what we could do to mark Electric Drive Week in September, that would be helpful as well. And that's all from me.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Jim. I think we're there. We've hit our time. Have we? It's about 3 o'clock. Oh, it's getting close. We're actually a bit ahead of schedule. But anyway, any last comments, questions, anything that anybody would like to speak to? Otherwise, we can sign off. And it's Don.
David, you mentioned Clipper charger. Is the same as Clipper Creek?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah. Don, did you have your hand up?
Just waving goodbye.
Okay. Cheers.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
See you, Fred.
Go forth. Do good.
Thank you all so much. Shine on.